I finally reached 100 subscribers! Yes, that's right, it took me 2 years to reach 100 subscribers. On Twitter, I promised that if I reach 100 subs, I would revisit the 2016 Powerpuff Girls, you know, my favorite show ever. And as a matter of fact, I did that. I hadn't seen an episode of the Powerpuff Girls reboot since last year, and the last episode I watched was Fashion Forward. I was too disinterested to watch the rest of season 1, so I skipped to season 2. The only episode I found to be an interesting one to review was A Star is Blossom, because, well, every other episode was kinda boring. This episode might be one of the worst episodes I've seen from this show, and no, it's not just because of the Jared incident. This episode is just so bad in so many ways. The plot is basically that Blossom is mad and jealous because Bubbles got to play her role in a school play and the role required the actor to kiss Jared or something. Here's one of the reasons I hate this episode. This story makes absolutely no sense. For some reason, Blossom wasn't casted as the lead role, despite the fact that Blossom has much more experience, unlike Bubbles, who has little experience in acting. It wasn't even implied that Bubbles was some sort of a gifted actor or something. We never got to see how talented she really is. On the contrary to Blossom, who was established in the very beginning of the episode that she was pretty much the best actor in the school, or at least the most recognizable actor, and yet they casted her to play a freaking rock with no lines and no emotions. Heck, the episode didn't even bother to imply that the director was somehow incompetent. It was implied that she was crazy, but not a terrible casting director. No logic or motive was given for this laughable casting decision. What makes it even worse is that the lead character of the play is red-headed, which gives even more reason for why they should have casted Blossom. Now, I think I understand what they were going for. I think they wanted to make the entire casting decision so ridiculously unlikely, which makes those moments when Blossom was shocked that Bubbles got her role more hilarious. However, just because something is meant to be a joke doesn't automatically excuse unlikely actions. Even the most ridiculous situations need to have motives, especially when they serve a huge role in the plot. If this were a quick gag, I honestly wouldn't have given a crap. But this is a major plot detail. Heck, this probably could have been fixed if the casting director had been that idiot photographer from Bubbles of the Opera. Sure, it would have made me question the competency of the school managers even more, but at least it would have cleared up this issue I have. Blossom and Bubbles were acting so out of character in this episode. Bubbles for some reason failed to realize that Blossom was upset and jealous that she wouldn't play alongside Jared. Like, I'm sure Blossom has expressed her feelings for Jared several times. There's no way Bubbles is completely unaware of that. I mean, I'm not saying that Bubbles should have quit her role for Blossom's sake, I'm just saying that she should have at least noticed that Blossom was envious and upset. However, Bubbles wasn't nearly as bad as Blossom. Now, look, I get it. Blossom has a crush on Jared, that's not something I fail to understand. But geez, the things she did here. She locked Bubbles and Buttercup and lied to the director saying that Bubbles had an accident. Also, apparently no one noticed that the person behind the special effects, which was Buttercup, was also absent. And it's not like she was doing all of this remorsefully, no, she was acting like a complete sociopath right until the very end of the episode when Bubbles called her out for being selfish. And I know what some people might think, oh, she had a moment of weakness and she learned her lesson at the end. First of all, the way she learned her lesson was incredibly forced and obligated. This is actually the kind of poorly paced life lesson found in every episode of this reboot. My second problem is that it's freaking Blossom. Blossom is supposed to be the smartest and most responsible. I'm not saying she should be perfect, but her screw up should be by her standards. You know what? Maybe I should just give up. This is clearly not the Blossom I grew up with. This is clearly not the Blossom I expect to see. She's a terrible leader, she can't fight for crap, and she lets her emotions get the better of her to the point of selfishness. To think that for a moment I had actually forgotten why I stopped watching this show. Oh, by the way, I've noticed this little running gag, I'm assuming, where the girls are locked up, later break free and point out the idiocy of the people who locked them up in the first place by saying that they can easily smash through walls. It's not really safe to call this a running gag since I've only seen twice, and one of them was in this episode and it backfired miserably. The reason for that is the fact that Blossom was the one locking the girls up, and she should have known that locking Bubbles and Buttercup in the closet is completely moronic. which again highlights how much of a terrible leader Blossom is. This episode failed miserably at making me care for Jared when he was in danger. I think that's mostly due to the fact that this episode, and the show in general, does not care about Jared enough to give him a few futures and goals for his character arc, or something similar to that. They just basically write him as a token nerd character and throw him somewhere into the episode to give Blossom a romance related conflict. This just goes to show how lazy the writing for the show is. But you know what, I'll give credit where credit is due. I did kinda like the villain, if you even wanna call her a villain. She's more like a third act disposable conflict creator, but I did kinda like her character, and I would have no issues if she returned in future episodes. I also kind of admire how that director caught a haunted book for her school play by digging into a grave. Is it messed up? Absolutely, but it is kind of admirable. Oh, and I guess I should also bring up the Jared Shapiro incident. Well, all I can say is that it's pretty weird, but also kind of funny. Overall, I thought this episode was terrible. It was poorly paced, it made no sense, Blossom and Bubbles were acting out of character, and it featured some very creepy scenes that give away some unspeakable implications. I absolutely despise this episode. I despise the show in general. I really hope I will never watch this show again. Well, unless you want me to, then I could give it a look once in a while. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks again for 100 subscribers. Bye for now.